Okay, thank you everybody and welcome along to July's meeting. We have Councillor Nick Brown who's on approved leave of absence and Councillor Trenius who's due tonight, so apology. Having viewed tonight's agenda, does any councillor wish to declare a pecuniary interest? No, thank you, so noted. Confirmation of the minutes, 20th of June 2023. Can I have a movement, please? Councillor Reid, thank you. Second, Councillor Gatehouse, thanks. Any discussion regarding those minutes as circulated and read? No, I shall put them for acceptance. All those in favour? Passed unanimously, thank you. 5.0 is the Mayor's report. I require a mover to start this off, please. Councillor Campbell and Councillor Reynolds, thank you. And invite questions, discussion, or any other comments. Councillor Gaines.
You met with or participated in a TFGA reform discussion. Was that reform within the TFGA or?
Council reform, it was, they were putting forward a submission and they invited, there was 8 or 9 of us, mostly TFGA, but Wayne Johnson from Yamba, who used to be president of the TFGA, was part of it also, and it was just a discussion on the sorts of things that would affect the rural industry in regional areas. It was actually a very good discussion to understand some of the pressures they felt and how their organisation was changing to what it used to be with so many farmers on councils and their mentality of small districts to being more open-minded and expansive of those sort of pressures.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. You met with the Water Polo Australia CEO. What was that about?
Yeah, digging a hole and throwing some concrete in and building a pool. Yeah. The Water Polo Championships run in Hobart. So he was down here for those, but he was talking with quite a few different organisations, including schools and various other organisations about the growth of water polo. And it was quite interesting from the fact that Melbourne and Sydney, a lot of the water polo pools, the water polo is conducted in the pools of private schools. And very interesting that one of the private schools in Sydney actually has a underground cave in their pool to teach their students how to scuba dive. Private school, yes, not a government school, private school. But it was also fascinating the fact that quite often people build pools and think water polo is going to be able to use it, but a water polo pool needs to be 1.8 to 2 metres deep for the whole length, not tapered. He was aware of our situation and our thoughts on a pool. He was also talking to Catholic education and various people because of the expansion down here, and it was more about I'm going around seeing as many people in Tasmania as I can, and if the opportunity comes up where you are looking at something like this in your municipality, would you talk to us first before the planning goes in so that we can explain how we might be able to utilise it. It was just a very sensible, good discussion, and he quite an intelligent fella. He'd run aquatic centres, so we'll put him in contact with Luke to have a chat, and it's just good general information topic.
Thank you. And also the Hobart Chargers. How did that go?
Yeah, really good. They were quite fascinated with their one game they've had down here, and they are waiting for their new roster to come out to see how they can split their season up a bit more and probably make the South East Stadium an area where they can play more games, and how we captivate the public around here to support it. They know that a lot of their supporters will travel from Edinburgh over all around down this way, but some won't. So they want to generate, captivate the imaginations of some of the young people and the parents down here to participate also. So we talked about things like seating capacity and how the corporate boxes may work, and how local sponsorship, even though charges have their set sponsorships at decent levels to fund their organisation, how when they come down to play, the opportunity for local businesses to be involved in sponsoring part of that night. And just little things like that. A lot of work to do, but they will be back talking to Sonia a lot more once they have their roster out and they can actually plan with double headers, so they can play one in town and then the next night down here or vice versa.
Good, thank you.
All positive though, all positive. Councillor Reynolds.
Through the mayor, your meeting with the Beacon Foundation, what was that in regards to?
There's been quite a few meetings with the Beacon Foundation lately, with Scott Harris, and I have a decent relationship with these days, and then the CEO come down to see me on more of an operational side. At the moment, we're looking how the Jobs Hub and the work that some of the staff there are doing in respect to the school, and where Beacon has got some issues in conducting all the things that they do in some of the other schools. They find it hard in some of the areas that they can't get the right staff. So fingers crossed over the next 6 months we'll have a closer link up so that instead of duplicating or crossing over, it can be in conjunction with instead of in opposition to.
Thank you. Could I also ask about your meeting with the Durham Valley GM around waste?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago at Kingborough we had a meeting of all the councils involved with STE WA. We had a board meeting to start with, and Ron come along in his role at the moment of GM, and we're getting ready to do a strategic plan. We're holding it back for a few months because the government haven't finalised their timeline with the waste board yet on some of the things that have got to kick in, including container deposits. So we've just got to be maybe us saying one thing and then it changes a few months later. But we had a bit of a think around there, and Ron had some very sensible ideas from his experience in how waste can be managed. And some of that is what I've talked about a fair bit about the copying model, how it all started out slowly and everybody was too scared to talk about waste. Now it's a different ballgame, and now that the copying or the Southern Waste Solutions becoming a very mature professional business model, a lot of other councils have got pressure on to close their present tips, not really landfill, they're the old tips. All of a sudden, quite a few of the smaller councils are starting to be in a position where they need to talk differently to what they have done for the last 10 years. Ron's got a lot of that knowledge. He's been involved with it on the side for a long time, so we have a bit of a catch up to discuss a few things that we might be able to put into the mix.
Thank you.
You had an interview with Mercury, mate. Did you feel you were well reported?
Oh, that sounds like a Dorothy Dixon. Let me start by saying some years ago, a reporter we didn't think was reporting correctly on some things, and to do with the way councils were operating and just putting minimal information into the articles. So we invited the editor and Judy down to have a discussion with the mayor and I, which was half discussion, half interview. Unfortunately, about 2% of the discussion, or probably even less than that, 1% formed the basis of the article. But to her credit, she did stay for an hour and listen to some of the pressures and considerations that councils are under now that they're not reporting on, like the asset management and some of the statutory requirements that the GM has to work on. And had a similar discussion with Josh from Channel 7 and Meg from ABC on Sunday afternoon when they interviewed me off then off camera, we discussed a lot of the things that are being reported about council reform, the opportunities, and they are quite surprised, even though we've told it several times, the mindset of both the Mercury and the TV stations is strangely missing on how councils really need to operate. So we'll keep having those discussions, and hopefully one day some of it will stick. Sorry?
The Workforce Australia visit, or the Jobs Tas meeting, what's Workforce Australia and what was the intent of the visit, what came out of it?
Workforce Australia is I don't think it might be bipartisan committee that's travelling Australia looking at what they do to change what we used to call job actives, they call workforce now, and Julian Hughes is the politician who's leading that up. We've met with them twice and had a fair bit of input as best, and they are looking at how they change the employment model and either how they cost share with the state or how successful our model's been here in the southeast and how they might be able to utilise that in regional areas on the mainland. I'm hoping it doesn't get bastardised in the system of federal versus state, because what we have to here is a localised approach to employment and training, both business and people looking for work. They have been talking our model up as they've gone around the rest of Australia. But our meeting a couple of weeks ago was more about discussing the pros and cons of the things they were looking at to stay in touch. And there'll be a lot more communication on that, and hopefully some of the things that we found here in the practices, it doesn't work in the metro, but it does in regional areas, will be adopted into some form of federal policy.
Thanks.
Just one more question. Through the Mayor, you met with Destination Southern Tasmania, you and the Jim met with Alex Heroys, is that right? Was that a particular discussion about the South East region as a destination, and were any sort of positives or shortfalls highlighted in that discussion around the area?
Yes. Look, Alex is probably one of the better people we deal with in one of these type of bodies. He's sensible, he gets it, he's hardworking, he thinks differently to most. He's actually quite concerned about how much he can do on behalf of certain councils, and he talked about a couple of different councils where, and Sorell's one of them, where we don't have a lot of traditional tourist places or destinations, and we talk about place-based tourism versus the concept of having people coming through the municipality and why and what they might be staying for, and some of the other. And the COVID changed the way tourism operated. We pay so much towards DST, and we have a MOU regarding that, and part of the conversation was the GM about the wording of that MOU to make sure we maximise any potential advantage. Some of it is more about the regional approach to things, how it works and how it interacts, and things like mountain biking and how it has an effect on tourism places or people moving through and whether they stay and spend money here or not. So extremely broad. We only finished that meeting at 5:20 tonight. So.
Okay.
But Alex is one of the good, genuine ones we deal with, who's a pleasure to deal with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a quick question about the Cuts Media event attended with Divas Panta. It says here, attended Cuts Media event. Is that about cut management?
Oh, yes. Yes. Had to do a fair bit of study on that one. For a long time, the discussion about cat management has come up on an irregular basis. And we've seen activity and process put in place for Bruny Island, which was quite central because limited area and cats don't swim that well, they tell me, so you're able to do pretty good counts and information on it. Sorell Council, Sorell School, Tassie Cats and Nine Lives have pulled together to do some work in Midway Point as an area to gather information from cat owners initially, to determine the difference between feral cats, roaming cats, cats that just let out for a while, or cats that are kept inside, and hopefully from that information they're going to use it as a captive market to determine better, more stronger policy around cat ownership, looking after your cat, healthy your cat, not being involved with the feral cats and the effect of either roaming cats or stray cats, which are different to feral cats again, in that Midway Point area, and trying to, the next stage will be to gather that information, a bit of education back to cat owners, and then also to start measuring things like its effect on some of the wildlife around the Ramsar site, things like that. So a lot more detail, a lot to learn on it. Sounded like a brilliant concept and a good starting point to gather that data so they've got something they can measure it against. Thank you. If there's nothing else, I shall put my report for acceptance. All those in favour? Passed. Thank you. No supplementary items before us tonight. And 7.0 is the council workshops report. Work group reports. Could somebody move this one, please? Councillor Campbell, thank you. The seconder, Councillor Reynolds, thank you. And open the floor up for discussion regarding any of our senior staff here. Councillor Reynolds.
Through the chair, thank you. Robert, you met with our neighbours, Glamorgan, Spring Bay and Tasman around the reform. Anything positive come from that? No?
Absolutely not.
Oh, positive.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, fundamentally, their councils have made their positions known to the broader public around their attitude toward reform and what they may or may not want to participate in. So I just thought it was useful that the GMs get together and have a discussion without mayors present or other councils, and just have I guess a without prejudice discussion on what could happen or what may happen, and just having an opportunity to explain each of our positions and understanding of the situation. So, being very much aware that they have to represent the views of the council. So it was certainly helpful, particularly with the new Tasman general manager who's only been there a matter of weeks. So it's just an opportunity.
Do you know the newly elected councillors in them regions, whether there's a different appetite around reform?
So
with the newly elected councillors, do you know if there's a different appetite there around reform, or not much has been discussed around the table that's public?
I can say at Glamorgan Spring Bay there is a slight change of opinion, but whether it's enough to change the whole opinion of the council, we're not sure yet because it hasn't been put to a vote, and I'm not sure about Tasman.
Yeah, thank you. And I've just got another question for Jess. Development of proposal for the youth consultation and TCF grant funding. How's that tracking, and do you have any sort of timeframes when you think that might be ready? And
we've received a proposal for the consultation, which we're currently reviewing, and then we'll need to go back to the TAS Community Fund to seek their approval.
okay, so it'll be based on what they say. Yeah, thank you.
Not just add to Jess's comments there, that discussions I've had with the chair of the TAS Community Fund have indicated that they quite excited about the concept of what we've put up. And the feedback so far has been positive, as long as we can tick a few boxes on outcomes and various other points. It has been very positive. So it's not like we're firing off into the dark hoping. We're actually working with the Tas Community Fund and develop something that will be quite significant for the area.
Thank you.
Through the Mayor.
Yes.
Local government reform, Betsy mentioned a couple of times in this part of the report, particularly the staff attendance. How many Sorell staff did attend those recent sessions?
Through the Mayor, it was very small numbers. There were 2 or 3 from the depot and about the same from the office.
Right, okay, thank you.
And between the 2 sessions for the Eastern Shore and the South East, I think it was even less for one, the South East. Smaller numbers from council staff attending.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, a question for Jess. Here says currently working on review and evaluation of new organizational structure, including all staff survey. Would you mind explaining a little bit what the staff survey and the evaluation is about?
So a bit over 6 months ago, we implemented a new organisational structure with our new work groups and work group managers. Part of the implementation plan was that 6 months in, we would evaluate how the new structure was working. And so there was a survey done around internal communications, work group collaboration and various other things so that we could gauge how the new structure was working.
So that's been done already.
The survey's been done.
Yeah. So is that a report that goes through? Is that an internal operational thing, or is that something that gets shared?
It's shared with the leadership team.
Russell, just a question you might have to take on notice, but I notice each month, for several months now, it is highlighted about the difficulty of inspecting and servicing water cars. I guess it worries me a bit to see the same comment in there each month. Is, we've talked about hiring a cherry picker, is it the sort of thing that we've got to have some sort of gantry built for? Because I guess it's probably they have to address it one way or the other, not just keep saying that it's a problem.
Yeah, and there'd be some other councils that are probably in similar nick, so we probably should have a talk at who we at and see what other people are doing about that.
Yes, because if you think a lot of Glamorgan, our municipality, Tasman, it might be a shared inspection facility for that sort of thing. I'm not sure how many water points they have, but this would be the water point for Tasman as well.
Yeah.
So it may be something, a solution that can be shared.
Yep, so I'll have a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through the Mayor. A question here about the appointments, I think for Jess as well. It says here recreation officer Sophia Farr, and so there's 3 here who are successful with their applications for casual employment. So are the 3 recreation officers or different?
3 recreation officers will see.
So what will they be doing?
They'll be staffing the South East Stadium.
Okay.
So
is it to support different, so the clubs or different aspects, or is it maintenance or is it?
Probably a little bit of both of those things. So when we've got more significant events or competitions there, the casuals will be working, they'll assist with some of the lower level maintenance in the stadium and bookings, invoicing.
Okay, thank you. Oh, quick question, I'm sorry. So is that only for the stadium or is this also for other things?
Only for the stadium.
through the mayor. On page 18, it's great to see the thank yous, the messages of appreciation to council. And to be able to read those. And then further on page 20, the Facebook posts, there's an extraordinary high page reach last month. Do we know what that was about? Something like 136,000 compared to 27,000 the next twice.
We get through the,
Tongue in cheek rates notices.
Or maybe
we
it's
do
something-
know, we can see the individual posts, what the reach was, so we would be able to find that out if it's not reported.
It's such a high, that's the one, such a high one that it's extraordinary. So it'd be interesting to know what was behind it.
Facebook changed the insights in terms of how we could report. That's why the Facebook reporting has changed from previous agendas. But we can take that on.
Thank you. Yep.
Right.
Thanks.
Anything else? I shall put the workshop group reports for acceptance. All those in favour? Thank you. Passed unanimously. 11.1 is petition withdrawal of the draft Blue Lagoon management plan. Blue Lagoons. Mr. Campbell, the seconder. Councillor Casada, thank you. Just your manager, after quite a few emails today, wish to make explanation, or can I ask you to make explanation?
Yeah, certainly, man. I guess consistent with what council explained at the two forum sessions we had a few weeks ago, less than a month ago. The draft management plan that's out obviously includes elements of stormwater management as well, and in particular, our proposed approach with a permanent outfall, and we've committed to engaging third-party independent experts to effectively peer review, but also to come up with their own recommendations for stormwater management as it relates to Blue Lagoon, inclusive of outfall options. So to me, it didn't make sense that we would, until we had that additional information, to stop the process that we'd already committed to undertaking. So, it's a draft management plan. We've done some stakeholder community feedback that closed at the end of June. There was quite a bit of feedback that we received. We haven't yet gone through it all. We are still in the process of forming up the formal engagement with the consultants. It's not an inexpensive exercise. We haven't yet got from them how long they will take to do the work. So we'll be engaging both consultants, both subject to council approval, so it requires a budget adjustment, but we're looking to not only the water solutions, the
Hydrological times.
the UNSW, I'm trying to remember what they call themselves. Anyway, the water lab, we call them the water lab, plus the Alvin Associates, who are the Hobart-based consultants as well. So once that's done, we'll be in a more informed position to then make any necessary changes to the management plan and to release an updated version in due course.
two councillors or community?
Yeah,
Through the mayor.
Thank you.
So there's been, because of the wording of both the petition and the response, there seems to be some concern or misunderstanding or confusion or whatever it is, frustration about what's being said no to. Can you see, through the mayor, to the general manager, can you see how that might have come about, and do we have other options available to us tonight apart from rejecting the petition outright?
through me, I'm not, this is maybe where the confusion is, I'm not rejecting the petition. What I'm saying is in terms of, you know, I have to make a recommendation to council as to what our action is to be with respect to what the petitioners have sought. And my view is that we haven't concluded the process yet, the investigation process. So until we've done that, I would have thought it's premature to effectively shelve particular elements or options within that management plan. So if there's confusion around the wording of the recommendation, then that's unfortunate, but it's not. My view isn't the petition is rejected, it's that let's conclude what we said we're going to do first, and then we can, you know, all parties will be in a position to know what council then is going to propose with respect to the management plan.
I think feedback that I've had is that is the perception, that it's no to the petition, rather than the process isn't finished yet. So with other petitions and other similar sort of processes in the past, councils decided to lay things on the table whilst more information is available, or whilst other things happen. Is that available to us in this case, or?
It is. I mean, technically it's you're not complying with the Act in terms of coming up with what actions council's going to take, but it's really only a technical breach, if you like. It's not really fatal in any way, unlike something under the planning legislation, in a timing sense.
Yeah.
And given all the matters that we're considering, I don't think it's a poor decision or an inappropriate decision to do that, because unless I have a direction from council to not proceed with what we're going to do, or to absolutely not consider certain elements of that management plan, then to me it's entirely appropriate, logical that we just complete the process first before we jump to conclusions.
Can I just follow that up? Is there a timeline on laying something on the table?
No, not on that, it doesn't specify.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you. To the mayor, then to follow up with the general manager and with my fellow councillors, I've also talked to many community members and I've heard all the comments from fellow councillors, and I've had much to reflect on this, and I think it would be sensible, it looks like it would be sensible to lay these on the table so that we have some more time to talk among ourselves, get more information, and also talk to community and communicate better. And if there are misunderstandings or things to evaluate, then we get the time to do it. I would really like to propose that. I don't know if anyone else would like to join on laying these on the table as a proposal for this.
Councillor, laying on the table is the procedural motion, so we need a mover and a seconder for that to be considered.
So I will, am I the mover and someone
Yes.
else might second it?
Yeah.
If there's
And
anyone that,
do we have a seconder for laying on the table?
I would second. Actually, before I do that, could I seek some clarification first, which is just in reading the recommendation. That's effectively what the recommendation is in practical terms, but it's the way the process is perceived that is the issue that we have. So if laying this on the table achieves that time, as we say, for things to be considered, then yes, I'd support that.
Thank you. As that is a procedural motion, there is no debate on that. I shall put the motion of the procedural motion of laying on the table. All those in favour? Against? Councillor Reynolds is against. Deputy Mayor, what was your vote there, please?
Oh, I suppose we put it on the table. My feeling would be that we should let the science take its course probably before the politics, I might say that. But,
So yes or no?
it's a maybe, yes.
Thank you. That's a dodgy yes. So we had one against. Just nothing.
Can I speak to that as well?
It's not on a procedural motion, no. But that'll come back up in workshop and go through the processes in this one.
Thank you.
12.0 is land use planning. The Mayor advised in accordance with provisions of Part 2 Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2015. The intent of the Council to act as a planning authority pursuant to the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993 is to be noted. In accordance with Regulation 25, the Council will act as a planning authority in respect to those matters appearing under item 12 on this agenda, including any supplementary items. 12.1 is the Sorell Planning Authority minutes, 4th of July. To be noted from a mover, thank you. Councillor Gadehouse and Councillor Campbell, thank you. Those minutes have been circulated and I will take them as being read. Is there any comments to be made on those minutes? No, I shall put those for acceptance. All those in favour? Passed unanimously, thank you. 13.1, disposal of public land. Move it, thank you, Councillor Reid, and seconder, Councillor Campbell, thank you. And invite discussion from the floor.
sorry, where you go? Okay. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you. Through the mayor, just a question to the general manager. We discussed this on workshop. So I am usually not in favor of disposing of public land. In this case, this is an access, right? Would you be so kind to just quickly explain the reason we're disposing? And yes, thank you.
Yeah, through the mayor, so it's a small portion of the Truly Court Road Reserve at the very end of it. And unit development built at the end was relying on it for its access. And there was a condition on the planning permit that Truly Court, the construction of Truly Court, because it was previously unconstructed in this section referring to, it's on page 51. Requirement was to extend Truly Court as a public road, the same dimensions as what it is. The developers instead built it as more as a private driveway, it's a reduced width, and came to council to seek our views on it, and we were of the view that there was no disadvantage by not having it built as a public road. Instead, it's only 20 metres long, if that, and only provides access to the development site and one other So we commenced the process, the statutory process to dispose of that parcel of land. There's a public notification process which we've done. We didn't get any objections, so now it's putting back to council to basically authorise me to conclude the process by sale. So we've had the land valued, and the developer required to pay that valuation, which I think was $25,000, and make sure there's a right of way included as part of it, but there's otherwise no disbenefit to any member of the public through this.
Excuse me, thank you. Just a follow-up question. Has there been any, does it need to be advertised, any representations from the neighboring properties? How's that work?
This is a different process to the normal DA process. It's a different piece of legislation. There is statutory notification that we're required to undertake, which we've done, and we didn't get any submissions. If we'd received a submission or submissions, then we're required to consider those, and we could still end up in the same position of wanting to proceed with it, but it just means that there's the opportunity for whoever put in a submission to challenge that if they wished through the Supreme Court. So it's not often we get any submissions about these, but it's certainly a pretty clear statutory process that we have to follow. So we've done that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on page 52, in the report where it comments on the strategic plan issues, there's a comment about the historical errors, if you like, or the unfinished business of council where titles and transfer of parcels to council haven't happened. In this case, was there a period of which the permit was clear on it, but the developer ignored it or misunderstood it, or what happened?
Through me, that's one of those two options.
Right, it went wrong. Whatever happened, it went
On
wrong.
behalf of the developer,
And we're fortunate in this case that what they've done is okay.
well,
And we
correct
come to
you,
this-
councillor, and say that they're fortunate,
They're fortunate. Good, thank you.
because the alternative was if we were in mind to
Reinstate.
use a public road.
So I guess my question, long way round, my question is, what measures are in place or what procedures are in place so that both those things, the unfinished business and the correct application permit conditions is applied?
Yeah, through me, the ensuring at subdivision stage that public land is transferred to council prior to issuing title is now clearly conditioned on the permit. There are, as Russell would know, there's dozens of non-transferred road reserves out and about, and the process, we could certainly go through the process to rectify that, but it would take some years, and it would take.
A further midway point would be not an MA.
Really?
Which is part of road.
Road reserves, yeah. It would literally be for the process, we would need tens of thousands of dollars allocated to do this. But we will have $100,000 without.
And the net result, other than the fact that we're still maintaining, is not much different other than the correct on title.
So there would be circumstances that arise in future where it becomes relevant, maybe?
Yeah.
In which case it would be dealt with,
Yeah, it is.
otherwise?
Yeah, by exception only 3 minutes, yeah.
Okay, understand.
And through the mayor, as a response to the other question, the development engineering process around particularly unit developments and adherence to conditions is we've fixed the issue there. This was more development either not reading the permit or not remembering what was in the permit months ago when they started to
Make them
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, I shall put the 13.1 for acceptance of the recommendation. All those in favour? Passed unanimously, thank you. 13.2 is the local government reform submission. Move it, please. Councillor Reynolds and Councillor Reid, thank you. And after a lively few days of discussion on this, I'll open the floor for discussion.
Through you, Mayor. Lively, it keeps changing every day. So is there anything that the government's announced in the last couple of days that's fundamentally changed our position?
I'm sorry, from my point of view, at this point in time, I'd have to say no. We are still piggy in the middle, in the southeast, so our certainly my thoughts haven't changed that much. The local government board is still going to make its recommendations and still go through the process, which will allow both the public to discuss, it will allow us to discuss some of those recommendations more in depth and to see how they work in that. It'll be up to a lot of the others to once again show that negativity by saying no, no, no. But there may be things that come out of it that might still be workable and be able to discuss. So from our point of view of being an open council, that's pretty well most of the time had the thought pattern of being fair, open and positive about the discussions. I don't think from my point of view anything's changed.
Now, I got the impression from the reporting today that it was almost up to the councils and to have some kind of heads of agreement between different councils.
There are some
Government
councils,
the government stepping out of it, doesn't it, really?
still councils in strong positions towards various forms of reform. I don't think our position changes one little bit at this stage, but we've got a lot of discussion to go through to the next recommendation. And there'll be plenty more moving goalposts on it, I'm sure, in the next few weeks as well. That'd be a fair summary, Julian.
Well, we've still got the two public hearings to attend. The 4th of August, another one later in the month for the two catchments. I'm not sure to what extent the wind has gone out of the sails of the whole process, but as the Deputy Mayor pointed out, the council's hope is that the councils will work together to pursue this, but I just shake my head in disbelief at that. I mean, we're in the situation where I don't know how many years we've been bashing away at this and haven't been unable to get our neighbours to agree fundamentally, so that situation hasn't changed. So I'm not sure to what extent we can realistically think we'll have any success with our immediate neighbours sort of changing their position on this, which is fine. And obviously within their realms to do what they wish to do.
Ask a follow-up question. Thank you. In the background, as it states that one of the 5 principles that the local government board is working to is preserving and enhancing local voice. Yet that is the very thing that is the main issue purported to be the main issue around the amalgamation discussion. I don't know what my question is actually. How in the process, some councils in this process, with the focus so heavily on amalgamation rather than reform, in the public domain anyway, even though the whole process has been run by the local government board in a very comprehensive and very well researched way, how has some councils have been engaging their own communities as well as the local government board engaging communities? Sorell's chosen not to do that. Have we got any sense of, there's a comment in the report here about the extent or otherwise of the community interest in the process? What are your thoughts on that?
There are very few councils that have engaged with consultation of the public because it hasn't been a defined thing to go and talk about.
Okay.
There are a couple that are, but they're only doing it on the models that they want to put up. Most have found it quite difficult and have used it as a point of argument that it's very hard to go and talk to people about other people's communities when they don't know anything about it. The reporting that's come out, if you look at the local government board's website on the numbers involved, has been quite minimal in numbers from elected, from council staff and from the submissions put in so far. So one would determine by that most of the issues with mergers and amalgamation has come from elected officials, not the public.
Thank you.
But all that aside, and yes, there is a bit of the wind out of the sails at the moment, and I'm still gobsmacked at why the announcement was made about planning today, which just heightened the anxiety of local government towards the intention of the government. So, but when you brush all that aside, it makes no difference to the way we need to look at our future in both as a municipality and as a region. So I still think this submission is appropriate, and we will still have plenty of time to address some of the recommendations that come out in whatever form we decide to.
Thank you.
Mayor, you say you were gobsmacked by this. What do you read as the practical implications of what the government's thinking? I mean, are they saying you blokes won't cooperate, so we're going to take over your functions? Is that what they're doing?
Who knows? It's not relevant probably to the motion, but it's like everything, who knows what the government's thinking. And once again, if you look at, we are elected to lead this community and show vision for the future of this community. Everybody has different ideas and all that, and there's a lot of noise around on negativity and other options and weird and wonderfuls, but at this point in time, we're the elected officials that need to try and stand above that and look at what we do need for the now's happening, so it's more about the future. And if people think that the way councils are operating now is going to continue to stay that way, they're very, very misled, I think. The world's changing the way you need to operate, the amount of legislation we're operating on. So regardless of what individuals in government or local government say, we have to try and be a little bit better than that, whatever it may be. If there's no other comments on that for acceptance of our submission, I shall put it for acceptance. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. 16.1 is the financial report for June 2023 year to date. Move to thank you. Councillor Campbell, thank you. And a seconder. Deputy Mayor, thank you. And awkward time because all the invoices and things are still being collated. Very busy time in finance, I think, at the moment. If there's any questions for the General Manager on this, the numbers have been quite tidy all year and continue to be so. Guess we'll have our full understanding of the end of the financial year during the next 4 weeks or so.
Yes, it's due mid-August, the statements have been finished on.
There's no questions, I'll put the financials for acceptance. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Thank you. 16.2 is the Sorell Council Audit Panel Charter. There'll be questions asked here, so be careful when you move to second of this. May I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Reid. With the seconder, Councillor Marokasada, thank you. And open up the floor for a rigorous debate on the charter. It's quite interesting though, some of the points that are raised in there, you think are fairly obvious and obviously there's been some very sensible recommendations on some subtle changes towards a few different areas.
Through the chair,
Thank
may I
you.
say that we have a very well-credentialed and conscientious panel, particularly our professional members on the panel, and it shows. And we're very fortunate to have all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed.
Yes. Our chair of the audit panel is extremely good at this sort of thing.
So what we're doing basically is establishing best practice, and it'd be best practice in anyone's book, given the panel members' expertise. One of the things that's specifically relevant to Sorell though is one of the later points about the participation in the panel and just clarifying those processes. So good to see those.
Yes, from a council point of view as well, I noticed in there regarding time away from the panel or participation, I thought that's view of history of the past, that was quite relevant for those changes, yes.
Yep.
If there's been nothing else, I shall put the motion for acceptance. All those in favour? Passed unanimously, thank you. Seventeen point one is amendment to fees and charges for planning. Mover, thank you. Councillor Campbell, thank you, and a seconder. Councillor Gatehouse, thank you, and open the floor for discussion. Self-explanatory, a fair bit there.
Thank you, through the
Councillor,
mayor.
thank
Is this a question for the general manager? Yes?
More than likely.
Thank you. Yeah, so just clarifying, in the little table in page 77, it says Sorell with error. So are we just correcting something with this?
Yeah,
Yes.
sure, it
No.
was an oversight, unfortunately, but it's a correction.
Okay.
Thank you. I shall put the motion for this correction. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Seventeen point two, the Sorell Council Natural Resource Management and Environment Advisory Group. Just before I ask for move and second, I'll just ask for clarification on a point that was pointed out of I'm not sure it was a typo or just a oversight in there before we go for move and second.
Thank you,
General Manager.
I was actually triggered in a sense from an email from Councillor Reid. I double checked something and so I've realised that on page 83, which is in the actual terms of reference themselves, part 3, which is the membership, we've had a bit both ways with this. So in terms of the chair, we've at one point said that the membership will comprise of 2 councillors, in brackets, 1 will chair the committee on a rotational basis, which I'm quite comfortable with. And then at the end of the same paragraph, we then say the chairperson of the group will be elected by a majority of voted members on an annual basis. So it is an oversight, and the appropriate approach should be that last sentence is deleted, if you like. So it's, the chair would be one of the 2 councillors.
Is everybody clear on that before I ask for move and second? Okay, can I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Gatehouse and Councillor Casada, thank you. Been through this a few times now, and it's a very well written document, and a lot of time and effort put into it. Is there any comments from the floor regarding this? Councillor, yes.
Thank you. Through the mayor. Yes, there's something that Councillor Reid pointed out about the name of the advisory group versus how is or is not the terms of reference are as a committee. Would you explain a little bit that, and if that is confusing, or if how does that work? Yeah.
Yeah, through the mayor. So historic, for the council's benefit, there's, in the Act, there's an ability for council to have their own subcommittees set up, which comprises councillors fundamentally. We've done that previously with the prior DASC, the Sorell Planning Authority. And separately, there's the ability to have a special committee, which is under a different part of the Local Government Act, Section 24. And most councils generally dabble in special committees in some way, shape or form, and this council has been the same. At the moment, we only have one special committee, which is the Copping Hall Section 24 Special Committee. We considered that as part of the development of this advisory group around whether it was necessary or appropriate, and on the basis that we're not delegating any functions or responsibilities to this group, or expenditure of any council funds, or carrying out activities on behalf of the council, as again with the whole committee. We thought it was entirely appropriate that it not be a special committee of council, but I guess some of the doubt in some councillors' mind is that, as you rightly point out, the way we've done the terms of reference is for it to be quite formal and to be very well defined, because something like this could become a very involved area of council's endeavours. So we just want to be really clear as to what the expectations are for what the group should be doing and how. So that's why we were happy with it as proposed, rather than doing it as a special committee of council.
Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Further to that, I'm very happy to see this finally before us after a long gestation, so to speak, since last year. But further to the point that was just explained, what is the other Clarence City Council, for example, has a sustainability advisory committee with the terms of reference, they call it a constitution, that is fairly similar to what we've got before us tonight. And we also have, this is called a NRM Environment Advisory Group. We have a seniors advisory group with no terms of reference and very much an informal communication exchange, a very valuable one. So the name seems to be incongruous or confusing in that sense. It seems that we've got a foot in each camp, and the naming conventions don't sort of fit with what we're doing. One way around that would be to call this an advisory committee, but then we're not activating the Committee of Council Provisions. So I'm not quite sure which way what the solution will be.
I suggest to let the context see how it works, because it's only a name at the end of the day, and I've never heard of confusion between those groups. They are what they are, and they work the way they do. So this is a well-written document. I just can't see that the name is going to make any difference to the committee members or how it works when the terms of reference in there look to be extremely strong.
I guess if I could just add that As part of the review of our common engagement strategy, we've got to look at, this is the first cat off the rank, if you like. And it's, seen as advisory group and others that are still sort of floating around in the sense we need to work through a process of just what they will be or not be and how they will be and how we're going to deal with these. Because there were still other potential groups that councillors had an interest in forming up, but we've also got to extract out of our community ratepayers as their preferred method of engagement with council as well. So it's going to be a fair body of work we've got to get through this year. But by virtue of, I guess, the time from when this was first raised, and the benefit of having DBAS here now is you can turn his mind to these things and develop them. So we're still, I accept that it's been written in a very formal way, but we did that deliberately so there's hopefully absolute clarity to if we get good membership of this, that they're really clear on what it's intending to do and what the scope is of it. As I said, because it can be, for a small council, this could be a huge undertaking if we're not careful in how we go about framing it up.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the mayor. Just a quick question following up that. By doing it like this without being as a committee, then it leaves room for improvement and evolution and shaping. That's the intention, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, we always used to have on the end of committees and everything else we deem necessary, but it's fine-tuned a lot since then. Thank you. If there's nothing else, I shall put this for acceptance. All those in favour? Passed. Thank you. Adding point one is plumbing application fees, request for waiver of fees. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Campbell, thank you, and Councillor Mero Casada. Any discussion required on this? Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a general question. So obviously they're proposing to put in this, what was it, self-pumping.
Line system, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, because you can't connect to the council's infrastructure.
By gravity, yeah.
Yeah, by gravity. So just the other properties, I'm guessing the one, is this showing, what page am I on? 90? Like the green.
89, I think.
90?
You're looking at it.
So the next one down. I'm guessing, yeah, that the green line, is that our current infrastructure?
Yeah.
Through Mayor. Yes, our
That's stormwater infrastructure.
Yeah.
extent of it, yeah.
Yeah. So then the properties also that are next to this one that's applying for, two of them, by the looks of it, don't have a dwelling on it. And the third one, do they also have, well, the two vacant ones won't, but that third one, does that also have the, what do you call it, the pump?
No.
No.
So
So
they off their own bat have decided to bring
To
there
do this.
to try and protect themselves.
Yeah.
And to some degree, they will help their neighbours
Yes.
as well, because
Yeah.
they're at the lowest point, the water will run there. So
Yeah.
they may very well end up pumping more water, and I have explained that to the client, that they're going to be pumping more water than potentially just what's on their
What's on their
property.
Yeah.
But for the benefit of protecting her property, she wants
She's
to
happy
go
to.
ahead.
Yeah.
So, our stormwater strategy on the website says, if you're in a low point, you've got to do whatever you can to protect yourself. So she's gone and hired her own plumber and come up with her own solution to try and make her particular circumstance better.
Yeah.
And it will actually help some of her neighbours to some.
Sounds great. Yeah, great. And then with those other properties, when they go to planning, is that something that would come up in planning that they would have to, because it'd be in a floodplain area?
With that information from the insurer, it's normally the height of the floor or things like that, to be a certain height above now that we have the information.
Yeah, great.
When you look at the water course down through there and through the reserves, we have the issue.
Yeah,
On a diagonal line right through probably 12 properties there. Some don't mind because they've come accustomed to it over the years, but a couple of them are trying to find sensible solutions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which makes sense. Yeah. No, thank you.
If nothing else on that, I'll put that motion for acceptance. All those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. 20.1 is the Municipal Emergency Management Committee. Councillor Reid and Councillor Campbell, is that right? Thank you. This is pretty close though, Councillor, do you want to speak to this at all, or General Manager?
Yeah, it's, through me, it's with, it's long overdue. We had some staff changes which necessitated reviewing this. And then at the time we were reviewing this, we had further staff changes, so it's taken a little bit of time to get it settled, and SES have been very persistent in holding us to account, which is good. It's what they're required to do. So it's a good outcome that we're able to get the people to nominate that have. So the key role, if you like, being the municipal coordinator, is between Sonia and David, who are both effectively have responsibility of all depot operations, which is really useful. And the others that have volunteered to play some key roles in the council and at the operational level, which is going to be really important if and when this thing has to take its course. So it's a procedural matter to get them recommended, to get them endorsed, and then it goes to the Minister of Police for complete the formal process.
Through the Mayor.
Yes.
Can we have an example of what it would look like? What's a scenario? What it would look like when this was activated in an emergency situation? This committee,
2013 bushfires?
yeah, but this committee becomes the sort of management committee, no?
No, through me, it's,
So they're the liaison.
Yeah.
Liaison,
Typically, SES or police will take over.
yes,
So,
but
and then
for
this,
council.
this person will then, would then be the
That's what I
liaison with them, and the full leadership of Sorell is expected to support this process.
Yes, but as far as the emergency management structure
Yeah.
is concerned, the command
Yeah.
is concerned, this committee represents Sorell Council and everyone else comes through that
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah, from a communications perspective.
Yes, yes.
And obviously they have resources that they can also call on, which is the other reason why they're probably well placed to do that role.
Thank you.
It sometimes depends on the scale, but it might be that impending weather pattern triggers and has done several times for us to be prepared if an evacuation centre is going to be needed. That's happened a few times because of roads, floods, things like that. But most of the time, thank goodness, it hasn't had to happen. But the phone call will come, be prepared, so there's a people to kick in.
Yeah.
If it's a major disaster, then you have the ARC committees, the affected area recovery committees, which headed up by the mayor, and this is at the council level, not at the regional level.
Yep.
And you need to be able to have those specific people in the council to respond to the day-to-day requirements.
Who know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And at a minor level, they will manage it with some liaison with,
Yes.
from expertise from else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
If there's no other questions on this matter, I shall put it for acceptance. All those in favour? Thank you. Passed unanimously. And we'll move on to questions from the public. And before I ask the first one, that you're here again, Wayne. In relation to your question last meeting on the manning of police stations over here, I've been a couple of times with the police inspector. There is the front desk is only manned during office hours, or have personnel there for that purpose. No police station has 24-hour a day or anything like that for people on the front counter. It's not required. All calls go through to a radio room. They would much prefer to have all their officers out patrolling than sitting inside a police station was my summary of the response that I was given. And having a couple of issues in my own business lately where I've had to use it in the early hours of the morning, I must say they were extremely responsive at weird, wonderful times in the morning. Police cars come from everywhere. I forget, I didn't hear the number of, we used to have four police officers working in this area. The talk was that when we were developing the building over there, that it was going to be 16, but I'm pretty sure when we had the governor over there last night, the inspector said that there were 23 officers working out of this building now. Now, I think some of them might be involved with the airport on a different sort of project, and some might be involved in a couple of other different areas, but the benefit of having this as a central location is that even if those officers are doing, have other duties, they are still police officers, they're still moving around in their vehicles, so it still gives us a damn sight more coverage than we've ever had in the past. Could I just ask any member from the gallery with a question? Yes. Wayne.
Thank you. I'd just like to acknowledge and commend council for seeking more expertise on to inform of the management of Blue Lagoon wetland, and also excuse me, to thank councillors for leaving the petition on the table for the time being, because I think there was a risk that people in the community who supported the petition would have interpreted not accepting it as rejecting it, and that would have made it hard for them to participate in the process going forward. And just sort of like to ask, have people read the draft Blue Lagoon management in its entirety? I'm guessing that's a lot to ask of people who have so much to read already, given that it's over 108 pages. But I expect most people have read the executive summary, which I'm sure is what community members did, given that they had a very short time period and most wouldn't have been able to read the whole document. But if you have read the executive summary, you would see that, and perhaps the budget, you would see that the only significant action that is supported in that plan is the proposal to put a stormwater pipe to Blue Lagoon Beach or Red Oak Beach with an outfall on the beach, a hard structure. And so I wasn't involved in putting the petition up or wording it, but I would ask you to understand that given that most people in the community will have read the executive summary and looked at the budget and seen that the only significant money set there is the coastal erosion and risk management program money from the federal government, which is set aside for that hard structure in the Jury. So, yeah, thank you and thank you. And a question, will there be an opportunity for members of the community to engage with the consultants?
Oh, through me, at this stage, Gwen, no, but only because the cost of engagement at this stage looks to be quite high, and there's obviously any additional engagement they conduct with the community adds to it. They've given us an option to, if that's to happen, but we've got to put a report to the August council meeting to authorise the expenditure because it's unbudgeted. But at this stage, we don't see this being a key outcome of that type of engagement with the consultant. It's more of a technical assessment and peer review of not only the information that we provide, but they're making their own, informing themselves of all the characteristics that form that Blue Lagoon catchment, and providing the recommendations around that.
Yes, we have asked them to look at any potential options to manage the stormwater. And whilst the capital money is related to Blue Lagoon, I think there's a significant amount of operational money that's been put in the operational budget to the management of Blue Lagoon this financial year as well.
And given that the only opportunity that the community have had really to share their thoughts, their local knowledge, their concerns about the lagoon is in responding to the draft plan. Two questions: will those comments be made available to the consultants? And is it possible to, like in the past when I've been involved in these things, there's usually a possibility to sit round the table and for people to share their ideas, their knowledge. You know, some people in our community have a lot of knowledge in managing stormwater. Some people know a lot about the ecology. A lot of us have witnessed over the years the failure of hard structures in the soft dune landscape that we're talking about. Would it be possible to make available an option, you know, a time when people can do that, when we can actually workshop rather than, you know, pour our knowledge and our hearts out on paper once again and it goes into a black hole and we never know if it's been considered or what's happened to it or who it's been shared with.
The answer would be potentially when it's, like I said, we an open book approach with them as to what information they want that we're holding, and they certainly have the opportunity to have access to all submissions, all the reports with commissioned data and designs and inundation modelling, etc. So we would have to, it's a bit of a judgment call as far as cost and what benefit it may bring. So it's already in the vicinity of $50,000, which is not insignificant, obviously, with in the operating budget this year for Blue Lagoon. We've already made, with GBAS's recommendation, a fairly significant allocation to commence the removal of some of the pine trees and also to get rid of some of the Bunny that's causing some issues. I think between those two,
It's 120 total for the mix of projects, I think, that we've put in.
that's inclusive of some trying to partner with the Red Hagfish fraternity as far as they've got access to funds as well, and doing some work with them around signage and education. So it's a matter we need to bring back to council in August to firm up the expenditure that's required and what appetite council has to allocate more potential to it if we want to expand the scope to have more contact between the consultants and the community.
Ryan?
My name's Wayne McCarthy. It was pleasing to see the mayor picking up papers and everything last week. But my questions about that area out there, that roundabout, just down from your place, is a disgrace, really. When you look at the other roundabouts out this way to that one there, can something be done with that? Could either artificial grass or concrete it over, or put it onto a weekly mowing program just to tidy it up, because it looks, coming from Hobart into Sorell, going down towards the southern beaches, it looks terrible.
We agree with you full-heartedly there, but I'll just ask the GM. It's not ours, it is controlled by the state, and there is a landscaping bit that hasn't been done yet, I think, but General Manager's more up to date with Wayne, so I'll get him to explain the maintenance period too.
I'm only marginally more up to date. So we've been liaising with state growth around timelines when they're actually going to provide the landscaping concept for particularly the one closest to Hobart. The whole project is still on maintenance between state growth and the contractors, but they haven't finished the job as far as what landscaping they're putting in. We haven't yet seen a formal plan, and it's well overdue, but,
And it was a condition of the permit as well.
short of taking formal action against them, which I wouldn't recommend, we're trying to work with them cooperatively to get a commitment out of them about actually providing what they were obliged to provide probably a year ago. So the job hasn't finished yet in that respect.
And it is both roundabouts playing, so it's the other one up the other end as well.
Yeah, and even when we've spoken to the government, we can't speak directly to the contractor. So you go to government, but government can't give you an answer because it's still under the contractor's agreement. Signage is also another issue that's been raised countless times, in fact twice this week, with elderly people driving to Sorell and didn't understand the roundabout and ended up heading towards Dodgers Ferry because
Well,
nothing
then
said
some people
Sorell.
come from Hobart, go around the roundabout and come through that cut road.
Yeah, it's very awkward and it's easy to be critical after the fact, but there's been several points on signage, landscaping and a few other drainage, a couple of drainage issues down there too. They're still working on fixing for us.
We haven't actually reached agreement about, like, in terms of the transfer of asset, what's ours and what's there. They won't meet us on that either. So, like, there's a whole bunch of issues to sort out.
Yeah. Thank you. Sharon?
About 2 years ago now, I think the council was discussing, we're hoping to get our own electoral division with the increase in population and that. What's happening there and the reforms or non-reforms, is that likely to have any effect on it?
It was mainly me that was talking about the electoral boundary change. Former Mayor Doug Chip and the Clarence and I had done some work over the last 7 years on the fact that if we were able to have a larger southeast council, we would have about a population around 85,000, which would allow us to put forward a submission regarding electoral boundary changes. Now, at the moment, we're at the bottom end of lines, and it doesn't matter how good a politician you are, you can't represent Lions properly. And as we've seen by expenditure and electioneering, a lot of the money goes into Brighton, Longford, Perth areas, and we've never really received that much of it until recently. There are certainly some big strengths, in my opinion, towards us having an electoral area. They have some problems with the population changes of Franklin also. But at this stage in time, I've raised it at quite a few of the reform meetings as a positive towards how the southeast could look, in our opinion. But there hasn't been any uptake at this stage, so I certainly wouldn't be holding my breath. It is purely a conversation piece at this point in time.
Can I ask a question too? What's happening with the double lanes? I saw in the Mercury it was going ahead, and then I read in the Mercury that funding had been removed. What's happening?
No funding has been removed. The funding keeps escalating as costs escalate. The Mercury had it fairly wrong, and so did a couple of television stations, about what the story was about at the time and what they actually showed on TV. They showed the issues were around from where the lanes finish at the end of the airport to the first causeway, with several issues to do with what we thought was going to be the simplest part of the highway to do. But the television crews and the Mercury kept talking about the causeways. Now, they are still under the EPBC, where the environmental issues to do with the starfish and a couple of other issues there are still being looked at. One could, if they were sceptical enough, could say that the concentration of efforts at the moment might be on the Brighton Bridge. But I'm assured by everybody I can speak to, from the Treasurer down through the department, that the engineering is still happening at the moment, and they have a timeline with the federal environmental people that they can't rush. That just has to be done as a separate body of work. I wish it had been done 5 years ago when we first realised it had to be done, but it wasn't. So I've been reassured that both the causeways are still progressing, and and they keep saying 18 months, but they are hoping to have a start point within 12 months. We have to wait and see. We haven't had an update for a couple of months now. We have asked for another update, and we do talk semi-regularly with the private contractor from Pitt and Sherry, who Sarah is the engineer doing a lot of the design work, and we know they have done testing to see what the subterranean or substructure is there, the geo reports. So they are doing design work as we speak, but at what pace, I couldn't tell you.
Can I ask another question too? They were spending, I think, 50 million on the Arthur Highway, certain parts of it to upgrade it. Has the council been informed of which parts are going to be upgraded?
I haven't been at this stage. They've done some consultation, but I'll ask Russell.
Yeah, so I've been to 2 sessions, Sharon, with the Department of State Growth and a number of stakeholders, including transport operators and various other things. Unfortunately, at that stage, they wanted to talk about what we could do in general, and I wanted to talk about what was actually going to happen. And I was told that I was jumping the queue. But I think ultimately they're still to decide on how to spend that 50 million. And the way it's going with consultation, they're certainly taking a large chunk out of it in terms of that process as well. So I think at some point they're going to have to actually technically say these are the bits we're looking at and these are the treatments. Because I went in saying, well, which shoulders are you going to widen because none of it complies with what it needs to. And we don't particularly like rotating lanes and where's your condition assessment and which bits have you got accidents on and all the rest of it. They didn't want to talk anything about that. They wanted to talk more about demand and how people sort of felt about it and all those sorts of I suppose, non-technical nature. But I think it ultimately will come down to a technical discussion.
Yeah, I saw some surveyors on the road, the winding part near Teresa's thing through there, and there's been fatals on that section. So I thought, well, maybe they are having a look at that too, which would be good.
I can say that section is something that was looked at way back when you and Tracy was talking with Reen. There was some land acquired so that they could actually do that section. That just hadn't been funded until recently with that 50 million. So
yeah, I did bring up that section. It doesn't get a lot of sun during winter and needs some more repairs. And they have done. Having brought that up, I've noticed that potholes are getting filled in slightly more regularly than they were previously, but they would say that's coincidental.
Thank you.
Yes, Ryan.
Sorell's got a great asset, but they're not going to, don't look like they want to use it, and that's that creek. If it was made a walkway from where it goes across the bridge here behind Coles down to where you go, you can walk to the new highway. If that was put in with the next heap of building plans that when they build along there, that the contractor developed that, it'd be an asset for the community. And you had a while ago you was talking about tourist things. I've been walking that little short track we got down there now, and people say, what a wonderful area, and that's the only part the tourists see. And that there's platypus and all in that little fish, everything in that creek, but no one gets to see it.
Yes, Wayne, we do have a fairly solid policy of any time a new subdivision comes in that we make sure the walkways are there. Just have to, it's fairly delicate down there because of...
There's not a lot of feral trees in it.
Yeah, and the clean out of that's difficult, and we try to keep that as best we can, but it is part of what we will be looking at with any potential development there. There's also been talk about widening the throat of the replacement bridge there is also to allow for things to be a little bit different. But we do still have to consider what happens when 4 or 5 times a year the water level increases dramatically and creates damage to infrastructure. Yes, but no, all that is under consideration all the time. And Southern Beaches, Primrose or Sorell, we are looking at how we connect up walkways and trails all the time.
Yeah.
All right, if there's nothing else, thank you very much for your attendance, and we've got a little bit more to discuss in close, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. I was only going to ask about the rubbish on the causeway, that was all. but I thought you'd mentioned.
Stornoway started this week doing, along the other part of the highway from the airport up. So I'm hoping that they will do the causeway as well. Been very windy. I picked up 4 bags on Saturday morning just along the Indian streets.
I don't want to be the rubbish police, but I do find it's a bit ugly.
We are aware.